Have you ever pondered how one of the world's most influential political entities, the Russian Socialist Union, abruptly fell from power? This is a tale of a giant that once straddled the world stage, a dominant force that suddenly crumbled into the annals of history. A story of power, struggle, and eventual downfall. Intriguing, isn't it? What forces were at play? What led to this precipitous fall? Join us as we journey through the significant events that led to this monumental downfall. To fully comprehend the downfall, we must first understand the birth and rise of the Russian Socialist Union. The Russian Socialist Union's inception can be traced back to the early 20th century, when a wave of revolutionary fervor swept across the vast expanse of Russia. The heart of this fervor was a powerful ideology: socialism. It was a doctrine that promised equality, fraternity, and a classless society, a stark contrast to the deep-seated inequalities and injustices prevalent in Tsarist Russia. The Bolshevik Party, led by charismatic visionaries like Vladimir Lenin, was the torchbearer of this socialist revolution. They envisioned a society where the means of production were in the hands of the proletariat, the working class. A society where the fruits of labor were shared equally, rather than being concentrated in the hands of a select few. In the tumultuous year of 1917, this vision materialized. The Bolshevik Party seized power, marking the birth of the Russian Socialist Union. It was a moment that sent shockwaves across the globe, redefining the dynamics of world power. The Russian Socialist Union experienced a meteoric rise to global prominence in the subsequent years. It became a beacon of hope for the oppressed, a symbol of resistance against capitalist exploitation. Its influence extended far beyond its borders, inspiring revolutions and socialist movements across the globe. But behind this facade of power and influence, the Russian Socialist Union was fundamentally flawed. Its obsession with maintaining a classless society led to the suppression of individual freedoms and rights. Its economic policies, centered around central planning and state ownership, stifled innovation and led to economic stagnation. The Russian Socialist Union was built on the noble principle of equality, but its implementation was marred by corruption, inefficiency, and authoritarianism. It was a society where dissent was silenced and conformity was enforced. Even as it emerged as a formidable global power, the seeds of its downfall were already sown. The Russian Socialist Union emerged as a formidable global power, but the seeds of its downfall were already sown. In the midst of the Union's power, subtle signs of instability began to surface. The Russian Socialist Union, a superpower that once held the world's attention, wasn't as invincible as it seemed. Like a grand building with a weak foundation, cracks began to appear in its imposing facade. The first signs of trouble were economic. The Union's command economy, which had once been a source of strength, began to stagnate. Production rates plateaued, innovation fell behind, and the standard of living for its citizens began to plummet. The government's response? They doubled down on their policies, tightening control over the economy and stifling any potential for growth. The economic decline was paralleled by political unrest. The Union's leadership, once hailed as revolutionary visionaries, were now seen as out of touch with reality. Their rigid adherence to ideology over pragmatism led to a growing disconnect between the rulers and the ruled. The once unified voice of the Union started to fracture into a chorus of dissatisfaction, and then, the rising dissent. The Union's attempt to suppress individual freedoms and control information was met with increasing resistance. An undercurrent of defiance began to brew, spurring a wave of protests and strikes that the Union was ill-equipped to handle. The people, once silenced, were now speaking out, their collective voice echoing through the streets and the world beyond. These cracks were more than just signs of a troubled system. They were the harbingers of an impending collapse. Yet, the Union's leadership refused to acknowledge them. They turned a blind eye, dismissing these issues as minor glitches in an otherwise perfect machine. It was this denial, this refusal to face reality, that set the stage for the Union's downfall. These warning signs, initially ignored, would soon escalate into a full-blown crisis. As we'll see in the next scene, the Union was on the brink of a seismic shift. A shift that would shake the very foundations of its existence and change the course of history. The tremors of instability soon turned into earthquakes of change. The catalysts of change, the major events that accelerated the Union's decline, were as diverse as they were devastating. Let's delve into a few of these pivotal moments. The Chernobyl disaster in 1986 was a stark wake-up call. This catastrophic nuclear accident not only had grave environmental and human consequences, but it also exposed the ineptitude of the Union's bureaucracy. It shattered the illusion of the Union's technological prowess and showed the world its inability to handle crises effectively. The radioactive fallout from Chernobyl spread far beyond the physical boundaries, seeping into the public's trust in the Union's leadership. Around the same time, the Russian Socialist Union was embroiled in the Afghan War. This was the Union's Vietnam, a quagmire that drained resources, lives, and morale. The war was a drawn-out, costly conflict that ended in a stinging defeat, further tarnishing the Union's image on the global stage. The war, coupled with the economic stagnation, led to widespread disillusionment among the Soviet people. Simultaneously, nationalist movements were gaining momentum within the Union. These movements, fueled by long-standing ethnic tensions and dissatisfaction with the central government, began to demand more autonomy, even independence. The Baltic states led the way, with massive peaceful protests that captured the world's attention. The central authorities' inability to quell these movements only highlighted its weakening grip on power. These events, among others, created a perfect storm. The Chernobyl disaster showed the world the Union's technological inadequacy and lack of crisis management. The Afghan war depleted the Union's resources and morale, eroding the public's faith in their leaders. The rise of nationalist movements signaled a loss of control over the Union's vast territories. The Union, once unshakable, was now on the brink of collapse. The inevitable could no longer be delayed, and the Union was delivered its final blow. As the cracks in the Russian Socialist Union grew wider and deeper, events in the early 90s would prove to be the tipping point for the already teetering giant. The year 1991 was a tumultuous one for the Union. The failed coup attempt in August of that year was a clear indication that the old guard was losing its grip on power. Hardline elements within the Communist Party, nostalgic for the old days of unchallenged dominance, tried to seize control and restore the status quo, but their attempt was doomed to fail. The coup was poorly planned and executed, and it lacked popular support. More importantly, it was a clear sign that the Union's monolithic power structure was crumbling from within. The coup's failure further weakened the Union's central authority and accelerated the process of disintegration. By December, several republics had declared independence, effectively leaving the Union in tatters. In the midst of this chaos, the Union's last leader, Mikhail Gorbachev, found himself in an untenable position. His attempts to reform and save the Union had inadvertently hastened its demise. Faced with a Union that was falling apart, Gorbachev did the only thing he could. He resigned. On Christmas Day, 1991, in a televised address, Gorbachev announced his resignation as president of the USSR, effectively signaling the end of the Union. The very next day, on December 26, 1991, the once mighty Russian Socialist Union was officially declared dissolved. The red flag with its golden hammer and sickle was lowered for the last time from the Kremlin, replaced by the tricolor flag of the Russian Federation. A chapter in world history had come to an end. The Union, which had once been a superpower, commanding vast territories and influencing global politics, had disintegrated. The dissolution represented not only the end of an era, but also the beginning of a new geopolitical order. On December 26, 1991, the once mighty Russian Socialist Union was officially dissolved. The fall of the Union left a profound and lasting impact on the world. Indeed, the dissolution of the Russian Socialist Union was not just the end of an era, but a seismic shift in global affairs. In the wake of the Union's collapse, Russia itself grappled with a tumultuous transition from a centrally planned economy to a market-based one. This radical change led to a decade of economic hardship for many Russians. Hyperinflation, unemployment, and poverty skyrocketed, while the wealth gap widened dramatically. The oligarchs, a small group of businessmen, capitalized on the chaos, amassing vast fortunes through the privatization of state assets. Politically, Russia underwent a significant transformation. The totalitarian system gave way to a form of democracy, albeit flawed and often criticized for its lack of transparency and respect for human rights. The struggle for power led to instability and a series of crises as the country sought to redefine its identity and place in the world. The effects of the Union's collapse were not confined to Russia. The end of the Russian Socialist Union signaled the conclusion of the Cold War, a period of geopolitical tension between the Western Bloc and the Eastern Bloc. This brought about a significant realignment of global power structures. The United States emerged as the sole superpower, while former allies of the Union grappled with their own transitions to democracy and market economies. Moreover, the Union's fall triggered a wave of independence movements among the 15 republics that comprised it. Countries such as Ukraine, Belarus, and the Baltic states regained their independence, each facing their own unique challenges in the post-Union era. The disintegration of the Union also led to a change in the global ideological landscape. The end of the Union was often hailed as the victory of capitalism over socialism, significantly influencing political discourse and policymaking worldwide. The downfall of the Russian Socialist Union marked the end of an era and the beginning of a new world order. The effects of this seismic shift continue to reverberate around the globe, shaping the world as we know it today. The fall of the Russian Socialist Union is a complex tale of power, ambition, and downfall. The Union's birth was a powerful statement, a seismic shift in world politics. It brought about a new world order, one where the proletariat ruled and the bourgeoisie were ousted. It was a revolution that promised equality, fraternity, and liberty. But as with most revolutions, the promises were easier said than done. The cracks began to show almost as soon as the Union was born. Economic instability, political infighting, and a populace that was growing increasingly disillusioned with its leaders. The once rosy picture of a socialist utopia began to tarnish. The ideals of the revolution were slowly being replaced by the harsh reality of governance. The Union was a grand experiment in socialism, but it was an experiment that was starting to show signs of failure. Then came the catalysts of change. A stagnating economy, a Cold War that was growing hotter by the day, and a leadership that was more interested in maintaining power than in serving the people. These catalysts were like dominoes, each one setting off a chain reaction that would ultimately lead to the Union's downfall. The final blow came in the form of a coup that was meant to save the Union, but instead, it only hastened its demise. The coup was the culmination of years of unrest, years of economic stagnation, and years of political infighting. It was the nail in the coffin for the Union, a sign that the experiment had failed. In the aftermath, the world was left to pick up the pieces. The Union had been a global powerhouse, its fall sending shockwaves through the international community. Countries were left scrambling to adjust to the new world order, one where the Union was no longer a player. The story of the Union's fall serves as a stark reminder of the impermanence of power and the relentless march of history. It's a tale of ambition, of revolution, and of downfall. It's a tale that reminds us that no matter how powerful a country may seem, it too can fall. And when it does, the world is left to pick up the pieces and move on. The story of the Union's fall is not just a story of a country, it's a story of the world and how it changes. The story of the Union's fall serves as a stark reminder of the impermanence of power and the relentless march of history. In the annals of history, the fall of the Russian Socialist Union stands out as a pivotal moment. This monumental event has left indelible imprints on the fabric of global politics, economics, and society. The intricate web of causes, effects, and repercussions we've explored is but a glimpse into the fascinating world of history. Diving deep into the past, we don't just uncover stories of kingdoms rising and falling, of revolutions and reforms, but we unravel the threads that weave our present. By understanding the rise and fall of the Russian Socialist Union, we're not merely indulging in a historical saga, but we're deciphering significant patterns, trends, and events that have shaped our world. So, don't stop here. There's a universe of history waiting to be explored. In every corner of the globe, in every era, there are stories to be discovered, lessons to be learned. As we reflect on the past, we gain insights that illuminate our present and shape our future.